Hello and welcome to my channel, Afternoon Tea with Karen. You don't need to like or subscribe because I'm not monetized. I'm not that good, and also I don't have the likes on or the comments. I'm not going to read them, let alone respond. I'm not that social. So, why have a YouTube channel then? It's because I found inspiration from Ballarat Council. So, when I began my YouTube and OBS journey, when you pumped in LGBTQIA, you only got one result. Now you get 12. Anyway, back in 2021, then Mayor Councillor Daniel Maloney said the development of the LGBTQIA Advisory Committee would be a tremendous asset to Council. It was then completed with an action plan and a budget for a part-time staff member. Then, with the assistance of Rainbow Local Government and Queer Greens Victoria, it was rolled out to all the other councils in Victoria. In the action plan, it does have Rainbow Tick, which is an accreditation process from the state government. Once you've done the Rainbow training, you get a sticker to put out the front of your restaurant, shop, or business so people like me don't mistakenly come in. They also have flag raising days and days for all their phobias. Then in June, the ratepayers and people who pay to park their cars financed Ballarat's first ever Pride Month. It was going to be a sea of colour with one theme in common. Well, this one was my favourite. Under 12s drop in at Q Hub. Games, snacks, crafts, and nail art fun. Hands touching hands, reaching out. You have notification emailed upon registration. So quiet spaces, noise cancelling headphones, sensory toys, mindful activities. Who are they fishing for? So I get that they can't reproduce and they have to recruit, but I thought this was a little bit rich for the first Pride Month ever. So from then, I got into just looking up all sorts of government documents. This one's really interesting. Well, not the video, just the document. Mind you, they're both really boring, which is the interesting part. So it's the National Men's Health Strategy. Like, there was a lot of stuff like empower and support men and boys to optimize their own and each other's health and well-being across all stages of their lives. And it's full of stuff like, we'll do some research, we're going to come up with some strategies, blah, 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 blah. And reflecting on it now, with all the stuff with the government and, the terrible violent men and all that, this actually makes a bit more sense to me. Look at my 125 subscribers there. I freaked out when I started getting subscribers. Once it hit 100, I kind of went a bit, people are watching me. Oh no.
There you go. Okay. There you go. I'll follow it fast. Into two division.
And that's me.
But not for the prisoners. So but basically, it's a very big part of Fremantle Prison's history that you just had to get used to. When you first arrived, most prisoners who I've either heard accounts of or have spoken to have said it's quite a big shock to realise that this is what you're going to be using for perhaps the next 20 years instead of a toilet. There are flushing toilets out in the yards, but there's also big drains out there. First thing in the morning, you take your toilet bucket outside and empty it out in the drain. And you leave your toilet bucket sitting out there because it is actually some poor soul's job to come along and clean all the toilet buckets. They're actually labelled. If you see, this one's been cleaned, don't worry. It's got C and D on it, which is your landing, because the landings are all labelled with letters. 67 7 would be a cell and 2 division. So this one comes from the next division along there. You leave the toilet bucket out there, and then at the end of the day, when you come back from work, you pick up the toilet bucket from the same place where you left it. It's labelled so you pick up your own toilet bucket, not somebody else's. That's gross. Once you've done your ablutions, you come back in and have breakfast. Now, breakfast and dinner were both eaten in the cells.
And there he is, my favourite person, Brian. And that'll do. See you later. Bye.